Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayam Namaskrityam Naram Tejaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jaya Mudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 41, chapter entitled Krishna and Balram Enter Mathura, text 18. Please repeat after me. Shri Shukha Uvacha Evam Ukto Bhagavata Sokruro Vimanaviva Purim Pravishtaha Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Shri Shukha Uvacha Evam Ukto Bhagavata Sokruro Vimana Iva Purim Pravishtaha Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Shri Shukha Uvacha Evam Ukto Bhagavata Sokruro Vimana Iva Purim Pravishtaha Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Kamsaya Eva Ishta Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Shishuka Uvacha Guru Vimana Iva Purim Pravishtaha Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Mataji's Shri Shukha Uvacha Evam Ukto Bhagavata Sokruro Vimana Iva Purim Pravishtaha Kamsaya Karma Vedya Griham Yayo. Shri Shukha Uvacha. Shukadev Goswami said, Evam, thus, Ukta, addressed, Bhagavata, by the Lord, Saha, he, Akrura, Vimana, disheartened, Eva, somewhat, Purim, the city, Pravishtaha, entering, Kamsaya, to comes, Karma, about his activities, Avedya, informing, Griham, to his home, Yayo, went. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Shukdev Goswami said, "Thus addressed by the Lord, Akrura entered the city with a heavy heart. He informed Kim Kans of the success of his mission and then went home." There's no purport, so we go to text 19. Lord Krishna desired to see Mathura, so toward evening he took Lord Balaram and the cowherd boys with him and entered the city. Again, there's no purport. So we take text 20 to 23 is all together. Translation. The Lord saw Mathura with its tall gates and household entrances made of crystal, its immense archways and main doors of gold, its granaries and other storehouses of copper and brass, and its impregnable moats. Beautifying the city were pleasant gardens and parks. The main intersections were fashioned of gold, and there were mansions with private pleasure gardens, along with guild halls and many other buildings. Mathura resounded with the calls of peacocks and pet turtle doves, who sat in the small openings of the lattice windows and on the gem-studded floors, and also on the columned balconies and on the ornate rafters in front of the houses. These balconies and rafters were adorned with Vaidurya stones, diamonds, crystal quartz, sapphires, coral, pearls, and emeralds. All the royal avenues and commercial streets were sprinkled with water, as were the side roads and courtyards. And flower garlands, newly grown sprouts, parched grains, and rice had been scattered about everywhere. Gracing the houses' doorways were elaborately decorated pots filled with water, which were bedecked with mango leaves, smeared with yogurt and sandalwood paste, and encircled by flower petals and ribbons. Near the pots were flags, rows of lamps, bunches of flowers, and the trunks of banana and betel nut trees. Purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives this description of the elaborately decorated pots. On either side of each doorway, above the scattered rice, is a pot. Encircling each pot are flower petals, on its neck are ribbons, and in its mouth are leaves of mango and other trees. Above each pot, on a gold plate, are rows of lamps. A trunk of a banana tree stands on either side of each pot, and a betel nut tree stands in front and also behind. Flags lean against the pots. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuva Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, we see how a pure devotee, in the previous chapter, in the previous text, we have seen that Akrura has been actually so keen to meet Srila Krishna and Balaram, his lordships, but at the same time he was apprehensive because of the duty he had to perform. He had to bring them to Mathura, but he was confident that the lords would know his heart. So he was quite at peace. Now he has come here and he was desirous of the lords coming to his house. But Krishna, because he had his plan, what he wanted to do, so he told Akrura to go home and said, I will come later after we perform our duties. So he leaves with a heavy heart. And then we have a wonderful description which we can only fantasize on what it must be. We can imagine what Mathura would be looking like when Krishna and Balaram are entering. If you can picture somehow, hypothetically, if somebody could actually, let's assume that someone actually makes a movie with the capability of bringing the spiritual world in front of us, perhaps we would not be able to absorb the shock of the kind of, because it's a completely different world. Even though Kans was in Mathura, but still, apart from the opulence, but when Krishna walks into his devotees' hearts, and there were many Mathuravasis who were, as we will see in the future chapters, the future texts, how the surrendered souls, how they were so anxious to bring their lordships into their heart. Of course, Krishna is already there as Paramatma, but to embrace the Lord by their surrender. So this is actually for us a story of how Akrura is the pure devotee. He is our role model for how we to approach the Lord. There is this heart-to-heart connection with the Lord at all times, and he's rewarded eventually. When the lords use Akrura as the instrument to enter Mathura, to bring back peace and sanity to the world by destroying Kans. So he's the one actually who actually does the task, even though it was started by Kans himself. So it was a self-destruct for him. So basically, we see that ultimately, only due to, as far as we are concerned, we have been taught that devotional service is the only way that how we can carry on and bring forth the goal, to achieve the goal eventually of how we can bring the Lord and permanently think of Him at all times. So Srila Prabhupada talks about this whole movement of ISKCON that Prabhupada started. Prabhupada's going to the West to preach there. His whole life was primarily to bring this reality to us, that actually the goal of life is to see how we can bring Krishna into the center of our lives. And how to do it is where his greatest success has been, that he has, in that short period of time, brought the kind of transformation in millions of people's lives. And then it is, in fact, increasing so rapidly, also thanks to the external environment which is so challenging. So Prabhupada would always give this during his talks. He would always say that the art of living is really what is all about, or the art of first you need to understand who an artist is. So Prabhupada would say that an artist is someone who takes basic raw materials and then transforms them into something very valuable. For instance, an artist, a painter, is also an artist. He takes some minerals, some canvas from the cloth, and then what is the value of that? You go to a shop, it is available in a few rupees, and then it transforms it into something which is extremely valuable. A good artist makes it into something extraordinarily valuable, even on a mundane level. Krishna's skills that are given to him. Similarly, somebody who's a sculptor, he takes a piece of stone from a mountain. Effectively, it is basically just a piece of stone, and then carves it into something unique, something amazing. And people see this for centuries. They go from all across the world to go and see some of these beautiful sculptures. Similarly, music, the melodies, there are basic, the 7 key notes, how somebody who has this talent takes the sa re ga ma pa ni sa, or as they say in English, do re mi la fa sol la ti, and completely combines them into bringing a symphony, a bhajan. These notes become so beautiful. Somebody goes to the jungles or just in the outskirts and creates a park there, an architect who designs it. So we can see so many ways that the ultimate common link is that it is from something of zero value to something of tremendous value that has been created. So this is an analogy to understand. Now that value, of course, is material value. That okay, now it was worth practically nothing. Now it is worth several crores or whatever. But in the same way, Prabhupada would say that we need to transform, and a person who's really understands the value, takes something which is of what is this useless body or the various materials? They are all inert, and it is only a matter of transforming that, dovetailing that. You can do it in 2 ways. You could, as the world will teach us, we can transform this. We can manipulate material energy into which we would call exploitation. If there is no goal, if there is no Krishna in the center, we would do the same thing. We would transform it, but we would do it for our own purposes. And on the other hand, a devotee would look at and see how he could transform this, whatever he does, whatever skills are given, whatever talent he has, or whatever background he's been given, capacity, wealth, intelligence, every asset that a person has, he's always looking to see how he or she would be able to dovetail it to serve Krishna. Should I say now? Okay, volunteers are required in the kitchen for sabji cutting. Must be an emergency, so those who would like to. In fact, cutting sabji, transforming that into something very nice is also an art. So, if you'd like to participate practically. So, Krishna says that, Prabhupada says that this art of living is in transforming various things into something valuable. And we can see that whatever occupations we have, people are engaged in something or the other. They're doing something, and some people are very, very successful. Some Most people would be moderately successful, or many may not be successful. But that is not the point. The point is that eventually all the occupations are going to die when the body is also dead. That has no value. It is going to become a big zero. So it is also temporary as far as we are concerned, even if we carry it on for several years. That itself is a question mark, because nowadays that is, nobody can be certain about it with the uncertainties that remain. So primarily the focus is to see that how we can, anything that we do, any activity we do, any thought we have, whatever we are doing on a day-to-day basis, in any act of life, we are always looking to see whether we are in line, in sync with what the Shastras tell us would be pleasing to a Guru, what the Guru tells us would be pleasing to Krishna, so that we make this something very valuable. And we have the example, of course, of Duryodhana and Arjun. If we take two, that in one sense they were doing the identical activities. So both were very intelligent, both were coming out to do battle. One was on one side of the battle, the other one was opposing. But eventually it was the same activity. They had the same kind of similar armament, similar bow and arrows, or the various instruments. They had the same similar strategies to employ all the army to fight. So all of this was from an external point of view, and both were putting their maximum effort. But then what was the difference? The difference was that Duryodhana was doing it for his own selfish purposes, and Arjun was doing it as a devotional service to the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita starts by saying, telling us, in fact, the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's instructions to Arjun and to us through Arjun, when Arjun did not want to fight. And he had his own logic to say, which at one level would be very understandable, when he was opposing and didn't want to hurt other people, especially his relatives, and he was actually in a renunciation mood. He was saying that, let them take everything, I'm not willing. I'm not worried about it. I'm quite happy if they were to take. So in spite of that, Krishna actually chastises him and tells him that he should perform. So it was against his will, but he was convinced, and therefore after conviction, he takes up the task of fighting, and then we know what happens. So ultimately, what was the result? That Duryodhana lost everything, lost his life, lost his reputation. And Arjun not only won the kingdom, but more important, he actually has got into the kingdom of God. Or he was he was a pure devotee, and he went to the spiritual world later on. So, irrespective of the success or failure, but it is the act that we do which is most important to us. And what stops us from that is really our consciousness. So, Prabhupada would always, that's why he named it Krishna Consciousness, because he said that he didn't want to keep it vague, even if when he talked of, first of all, the word consciousness itself was quite revealing, to know that, yes, the goal of life is to see how we can bring our consciousness to God. But he actually very specifically called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He emphasized that this society, and if you see the rules, the 7 basic rules for whatever activities the society does, are all bringing whoever comes in contact, to bring them in such a wide area, in so many activities. But the common thing is that how can we bring our consciousness to accept the reality? It isn't something which we have to discover. It is actually within us. It is only that we have to peel off, the external trappings. And that's where the art is, because the trappings or the coverings are actually superimposed as when we get into this material world. In the sense that when we come in touch with the material world, we have come here because of our own individual desires. And then we, because of the kind of associations and the occupations and the guidance that we have, the living entity tends to primarily become totally self-centered. and tends to forget the reality. So all activities that can be bringing forth, that is what Prabhupada wanted to do, and when he went to the West, in such a way that, and his genius was that it is for everyone, not somebody who renounces everything and goes to the temple. But how, in a sense, we don't need to go to Krishna. Krishna comes to us because we bring the Krishna into our lives, literally into our kitchens, into our hallways, into our living rooms, into our bedrooms, into our heart, into our children's lives, whatever we want to do. So Krishna can become literally the center. So that was what he do. So everything matters on where our consciousness is. The whole, if you have to summarize the entire aspect of our life and where we would be, it is primarily this: that what is our consciousness? Arjun's consciousness was very clear, and Duryodhana's consciousness was very clear. And if you see that if we have no guidance, then we will be, to some extent, Duryodhana may be certainly on a very, you can say, high level of capability of even on this level. Because even, or if you compare with, say, the past, the demons that we think of, Hiranyakashipu or Hiranyaksha, etc., they were extremely capable in all respects. Even in Shastra, they were extremely capable. So, externally, if you were to read Hiranyakashipu's thoughts, and when he speaks, even Duryodhana, at times when he speaks, they know the philosophy completely. They knew even Ravan knew the philosophy. They were all brilliant. But the difference was that it was, at the end of it was entirely meant for them. And therefore, if you see around us today, if we were to have as our goals in life, if we were to have our role models, those activities and people who are actually giving us bringing this kind of latent desires in our heart, that this is what I would like to be. My secret, most innermost compartment holds that desire that at the end of it, I'll do this. I have to please Krishna. I have to come to the temple. I should do it. It is also pleasing to some extent. It is also giving me pious credits. I'm notching up some brownie points. I'm having some credits assimilated in my account. But at the end of it, my focus, my main internal goal, secret goal, we think we are the only ones who have the lock to that small compartment. But actually Krishna has created that compartment. He is all around that compartment. So he understands our thinking. He understands before the thought even originates. So if we keep thinking, if you somehow can think that Krishna is, if we can develop that thinking that every time we are on our own, we are not on our own, but actually I'm thinking like this, I'm thinking negatively, I'm thinking positively, I'm thinking of doing this, I'm angry at such a person. If we start cultivating thinking that Krishna is the Paramatma, what does that mean? He's right. Not only is within me, but he understands every thought, and he's looking to see how we react. That wonderful example in the Bhagavad Gita of the two birds on a tree. It's such a absolutely it's so brilliant, and it's a lovely painting also. So if you just picture that painting, then you can see that Krishna is just watching, from inside and saying that, what is he doing? What is he thinking? Why is he thinking like this? And if we were to look to him and at least acknowledge his presence, even in our weakness, we are rebelling. Even in rebelling, you rebel against someone. So if you're rebelling, at least you turn towards Krishna. That's a start. So it's very, very, this is fundamental to whatever we do, that somehow we can bring our focus in activities in such a way that we allow Krishna to be in our lives. Then actually everything starts having a meaning. For instance, it happens because when anything we do regularly, it becomes mechanical. Like for instance, Sunday we'll come to the temple, have a nice time. Devotees are there, we have good fun, nice kirtan, prasad, go home. Next Sunday we'll do that. We go to some program, we like it. So it's a good thing. But often, then it becomes like a routine. That okay, in April, third week, I'm going on this. And then you have your schedule and you go on. But when we actually want to have that why is this, and sometimes you may feel that it is not giving me any benefit, so let me go. This person, I don't agree with him, or I don't like him, and he's organizing the program, or this is happening. So then you start allowing this kind of thing to come, because you've missed the ultimate, the key, most important point of this is that then we start looking and seeing that I am better than him. It comes to that we are actually projecting that we are a better devotee, someone is a weaker devotee. So slowly that kind of pride starts coming in. So actually if we see, if we are somehow connected and try to take the macro picture at all times, that why am I doing all this? Why am I chanting every day? Why am I following the regulative principles? Why am I doing this? Why others are not doing? We have to take both the sides. We put ourselves on the other side. We are also here. Then and even if we have desires, even if we have activities which are, let's say, not falling in line completely, even then, at least acknowledging that to ourselves and saying that, yes, this is the ideal, I'm not there, but Krishna, please help me. At some point, I hope my desires go down. And if we are associated long enough, then clearly the desires would have reduced, or at least some would have fallen off and some would have remained. Perhaps some become stronger at times, but the process works. And as we last time mentioned, that the devotee who told Gaur Gopal was telling the story about that Russian devotee who left his body. The last words he said, it works. So actually he just, of course, many devotees who have left their bodies also have seen that. But this person, on behalf of everyone, he actually verbalized it. So that became immortal because somebody spoke the words saying that it works. Literally, just before he disappears. And he says it works. And he left that message. So we should remember that there's something wrong with us or our thinking if we are not, if we are not happy, if we are coming to the temple. People may say that we may think that we are chanting, we are following regular, but I just don't have the taste. So that's when we need to internally delve, and that's where the Paramatma in the heart will help us to question our consciousness, and the consciousness really leads to our thinking and then the action and the consequences thereby. So how to utilize this is our most important, our body, our life, everything is the fundamental aspect. And we have several stories, and I would like to share this about from the Bhagavatam about Krishna's own best friend, the story of Sudama Brahman, where and he could very easily have been, being the best friend of Krishna. Can you imagine just growing up with Krishna, playing with him, doing all the mischief and everything in literally there were only a few boys who were in the Gurukul. And you are actually staying 24 hours with him for so many years in the most innocent days. One would, why he's glorified is because he still retained such a pure devotee, he retained such a humble attitude right through. And he was desperately poor. Very, very poor, such that he had become so thin. And his wife, and this is where the wonderful part of the story is that the consciousness of Sudama and his wife. His wife was extremely concerned about Sudama's health. She was not concerned about herself. She was concerned about him, and she felt that he was becoming so weak. So then she asked him that, because she was also a devotee, she said, why don't you ask, he's your friend, and he's so wealthy, he has so many palaces, and he's staying in Dwarka. Why don't you go to him and, there's no harm. So he kept feeling no, because a devotee would never like to ask anybody. And least of all, never ask God, because he would feel that I'm doing business with God. So there's no trade-off. That, we had our friendship and, these were the favors I used, so now I have got, I'm just encashing my chips or something. He doesn't think like that. So he's resisting, but at the end, now he succumbs to it only, he agrees at last to his wife's desire because he's concerned for her. So Krishna knows that, so externally it looked as if Sudama went to Dwarka to ask something, but actually his intention was only, okay, my wife is so, she's also suffering so much, let me ask for him. So he had no thought of asking for himself, and she had no thought of asking for herself. And then he said, okay, I will go. And then he said, but we have to give some gift to him. And they had nothing, absolutely nothing, completely bare bones. So she had to go out to beg to get something for, to give offer to Krishna. And then finally she got some chipped rice. Now see, Krishna is, we talked about him, and Supreme Personality of Godhead, his own, he's in the heart of everyone, and he of course knows what is happening. He must have obviously known Sudama's financial situation, and I don't think it should have taken much from his exertion from him to settle that problem. But why did he allow it to? Because he knew that he was glorifying his devotee at the end. So Sudama comes to Dwarka, and then he sees all the opulence, and when he's not even sure how he'll be received, whether my friend will recognize. And then Krishna, so overjoyed, he and Balaram, he comes to the gates and takes him in. He makes him sit on his seat, throne. He washes his feet. He gives him the most opulent prasad. So he gives him the greatest honor, and treats him like such a special guest, And then Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, is fanning him. So this is the kind of level to which Krishna really brought Sudama. And then the whole night, the two of them discussed about their childhood and all the pastimes and everything. Sudama never brought up anything. He was feeling embarrassed and ashamed how to ask, so he didn't even bring it. So next morning he was prepared to leave. And as he was going, then Krishna just said that, have you got any gift for me? So Sudama had, his wife had begged some cheap rice, and he had kept it in a small packet which he had hidden from Krishna's sight. So of course Krishna knew that, so he asked, when Sudama thought about the opulent prasad he had the previous night, and the palace and all that, he said, how I can offer this to him also? So he was hesitating, and Krishna just smiled, and he knew exactly where so he leaned over and took that chip rice, he opened it and he took a morsel, and he was about to take a second, and then Rukmini stopped him and said that, my lord, you are the Lord of the universe, and you have already, with one morsel, satisfied everyone's desires. So then Sudama goes away without asking anything. And then on the way, when he's going back, he's thinking that, actually my wife will be unhappy because I didn't even ask anything. And but at the same time, he was feeling very, very exhilarated and happy. He says, because such is the love that Krishna has shown to me. I'm totally undeserving. I'm just a beggar. But he has, welcomed me and shared everything. He gave me such prasad and washed my feet, and he treated me like a king. So he was extremely happy, just contented meeting his friend and going back. So when he reaches the place where he had his broken down straw hut, he doesn't find it there. He finds an incredible mansion there, a palace. And then all the people around that also, they're dressed very opulently. So he feels that I actually have come to the wrong place. I've probably lost my way. And just at that time, he sees very beautiful lady come out of the house with jewels and all that, and then he recognizes that's his wife. So, and then both of them look at each other, and they just have no words to express to each other, because each one is having such a gratitude and affection towards Krishna. That was their mood. So they're so choked up with emotion. This is external. I mean, she was prepared. She was only thinking of him, and he was thinking of her. So it was not important for them in that sense. But just seeing Krishna's reciprocation of this kind of love overwhelmed them, and they're having such an affection and gratitude. So what we see from here is that in Sudama's case, something which could have been a cause of our bondage and misery, because four things that could actually hold us back. I mean, Krishna gives us opulence, or gives us intelligence, or gives us lineage, gives us wealth. It can actually be a cause for our problems, because it can bind us down. But here, Sudama is so grateful that actually he and his wife, they live in a, later on as is explained that they stay in a very detached way, completely detached from this. And immediately they had understood that everything is Krishna's property. And whatever they did for the rest of their lives was thinking on that same consciousness, right? So that everything is Krishna's property, this is, nothing is ours. So they lived in the same simple way. It made no difference in their thinking and their lifestyle as they were in the, when they were living in the straw hut. So, in spite of being so physically and emotionally close to Krishna, right from childhood, he could maintain his understanding, and that only because he had real pride in his friend, but he didn't have false pride about himself. Also, there's a very nice illustrative story in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, Lord Chaitanya's life, when he had gone to Srirangam in the south, when he visited, when he toured South India. So at that time there was this he was a young Brahmin boy who was illiterate, had no education, and he was sitting in the courtyard of Lord Ranganath's temple, Srirangam, and he was reading the Bhagavad Gita. Now, because he couldn't even pronounce properly, he was not educated, so what he spoke was also not very, not even clear. It was very faulty, let's say. So he was, people were laughing at him. And this place, Srirangam, was the highest seat of scholars. You know, there are thousands of great pandits, learned scholars, all there. And when they saw, that such a person, every day he's sitting and reading there, can't even read, but he's still attempting to read. So they used to laugh at him and mock at him. And he carried on. It didn't bother him. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came there, now he is the knower of all the Vedas, and he's the Vedas himself. So he comes, of course he came with a specific purpose. And when he comes there and he sees the Brahmin boy, and the Brahmin is attempting to read in his own way, and he's crying also. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks him that, what is it that inspires you? What is it that you're reading that inspires you? So the Brahmin replied that actually I don't even pronounce properly. I don't know what I'm pronouncing. I don't even know what is the Bhagavad Gita. But I'm just doing this because the instructions of my guru, who told me that every day I should read 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita. So I am not concerned with people mocking me and laughing me. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm just doing this to please my guru, even though I don't know what I'm reading. So actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, lifts him up and embraces him and says that you are the authority on the Bhagavad Gita. You are the authority of the scriptures. And by embracing him, he impregnates him with all the knowledge and of all the Vedas, and also of ecstatic love. So here also we see that if a humble and sincere attitude to serve his Guru and Krishna, the Lord, is paramount, is most important, all other things pale into insignificance. So if there are any attributes that are given, like many have that, and then we saw in Arjun's case, and there are many great emperors and many accomplished people who also had who had a tremendous amount of capacity to execute. Hanumanji, for instance, he was endowed with powers to destroy him single-handedly the entire armies. But then they use it also. So it is not what is given to us is given by Krishna, but it is really the attitude, the consciousness that we have on how we approach this, whatever is given to us. And therefore, if you have nothing, seemingly nothing, that can also be extremely valuable to us. Srila Prabhupada would constantly tell us that when we see from this, he would say Krishna is actually conquered by the love of his devotees. As we saw in these stories of Sudama as well as the Brahmin. So he's Bhakta Vatsal. So the unconquerable becomes the conquered by just the love of his devotees. sincere, genuine love. And that love is not a sentimental that we may feeling that when we come in front of the deities, and we also feel not only attracted, but also we feel a lot of love and a lot of enthusiasm. But it is at times when we have the biggest challenges in our life, or when things are not going the way we want. Because you see, one thing is that the fact of life is that when we are born, we means anybody who is born, we come with this thought. Everybody comes with this thought that somehow what I do is right. It's not easy. Then we have to, with our consciousness, try to understand that not everything that we do is right, or that not everything will go our way. But initially, the thinking is that everything should go my way. If it doesn't go my way, then that's an obstacle, and what do I do to counter it? So this is where when we talk of a higher power or a supreme personality of Godhead, no matter what name we call him, it is primarily accepting the presence of such a personality, and also and his divine representatives helps us to understand our infinitesimal position in front of the infinite. That what can we do? What capacity we have? There's nothing to be proud of, really. We have no control, no limit. We're so limited and make so many mistakes. So, for instance, if we may be proud of our achievements, but the next moment, we could we could be utter failures. If you all know about the Second World War, the Second World War was when there was practically most of the countries in the world were at war, and among the greatest heroes of the war was Sir Winston Churchill. Primarily, it was Roosevelt and Churchill who were the two leaders of the West, who, along with Stalin, who really won the war. And so Churchill was, you can imagine his position at the end of the World War II, when in that war 6 million Jews were executed by the Nazis, and many, many millions died in the wars which were happening all over the world. Even India was linked because we were under British rule that time. So at that time, having won this war, one can only imagine what was the position of Winston Churchill, what level he had reached. We cannot, it is natural to feel that, over 6 years against all odds, and that too from a relatively small nation in terms of in the world size, they had such a big influence to play, and how they, especially the RAF, the Air Force of Britain was world famous. Even and now, people talk about how the courageous the Air Force pilots were. They did a marvelous job. They sacrificed their lives. And Britain really, along with the US, swung the war, and they won it. This after 7 years of fighting. And the next year, 1946, 1 year after the war ended, the British elections, and he lost. Can you imagine what he must have felt? It is unthinkable that a person who has won the war, he was like next to God. At least he may be thinking that, I have done so much, and the next year he lost the elections because people didn't feel that he was fit to lead a peacetime country. So they saw him as a wartime general. So the point is that at one stage he was the pinnacle. He must, he would have felt so deflated and defeated that I am rejected. So this can happen to anybody. We may be extremely proud of some special accomplishments we have, and then we can do the most abominable things the next. You may be reading in the papers now that in South Africa there is a very famous trial going on. This is it's a very unique personality. This young man, he has lost his legs since childhood, and but such was his indomitable spirit, such was his determination and passion to go against all odds, that actually he has these artificial limbs, legs. I think they're called prosthesis, I'm not mistaken. And but not only that, many people have it. But he has used it to actually run very fast. So fast that he is by far the fastest in the world when he actually runs. And he's much faster than a normal person when he runs with that. It's quite extraordinary. So everybody refers to him as the Blade Runner. But the same passion, the same, you can say, the huge desire to succeed against all odds, to conquer what was not, the obstacles that were there. Somehow, he had a very beautiful wife and or girlfriend, I think, but and then he shot her. So now the case is going on because he killed her. Now, because he's saying that he thought it was an intruder because he shot her through the bathroom, and then the case is that he did it out of anger. But whatever happens in the outcome, his reputation has been destroyed. People, all the endorsements that he had, and he was literally a legend in so many people's lives. He was the ray of hope for everyone. It just vanished overnight. People now all over the world start doubting. So we have to recognize that it can happen to anybody, that one moment you have accomplished so much, and you may act something so stupidly, some or worse, it may be so abominable. So one can do it, and so this is unbridled the senses, and all of us are subject to that. All of us subject to that, and the more we have focused our tensions and our anxieties and our determination into achieving something spectacular, we have to be even more guarded, because it is so inflamed that there is a very thin line dividing our feelings that we can do anything. And then when we get some setback, which everybody will get, there is no question about it, we just won't be able to accept it. And eventually somebody may say, I saw him, he succeeded, and then he died. So he succeeded. But actually, if a sensible person will understand that whether sometime or the other, in life or in death, you will be surrendered to the Lord. Because better to surrender with your intelligence and wisdom, and it's said that you pay obeisances, then you are lying flat on the ground. And when you're dead, you're lying flat on the ground also. But it's the other way around. So eventually you have no control over how you leave this world. So primarily, we have to recognize that the senses are difficult to control, and therefore part of the aspect of accepting the Lord and trying to curb our pride is to understand the dangers of unbridled senses. And especially when for almost all of us, well, in fact for everyone, but many of us who are who are actually working with the material energy outside, and we are constantly in our endeavors for improvement in our occupation, in our desires, which can be very good, very nice. But if it is not controlled or not ring-fenced by this understanding, by the association of devotees, by their guidance, then the danger is that it can just conquer us and it can devour us, and whatever we may have achieved, it could be destroyed. So whatever we do, if we have success, then all the more reason we should be guarded. There are people who have been, and every one of us would have examples of that. There are people who have been so successful in so many ways, but whether they are whether they're tailors or whether they are musicians or carpenters, any kind of occupation will have some extraordinary success. But businessmen, or politicians, bureaucrats, but we all would know that somebody just falls from grace, something happens and he's wiped out, he goes into debt, some problems happen. So, and then the general mood becomes very unforgiving, and then he or she is torn apart. There's so much criticism, rightly, wrongly, so many things. So the person, so we only then read so many times then in 3 lines that so-and-so committed suicide. Every day, there are 1 or 2 people who jump in front of the train in Mumbai, I don't know if you know, but on an average, 10 people die on the tracks on just the suburban railway trains, Western and Central, and every day, 10 people, 3,000 people. Some are accidents and some are suicide, but average of 10 a day. So, it's a number, it's a statistic. We don't know, but who knows what is the mind of a person who's just about to quit this world. So, how do you come to that level when you have completely, you see darkness everywhere, total frustration, complete. So, it's such a painful thing for him, for his family, but also for a compassionate devotee. And that is where our acharyas and then Srila Prabhupada, such was his compassion that it actually encompassed everybody. And so many great personalities that we see, both within our movement, outside also, who are doing their best selflessly to see that such people can actually see the reality that nothing is hopeless. You may have lost something, you may have lost money, or you have done something crazy, whatever it is. But, ultimately, there's always a better future. If we understand that life is coming from, this living entity never there's nothing like death. We've been there for millions of lives. We've been eternal. Now we are eternal, and we will be going through various passages of our cycles of life. So if we can only improve if we get that consciousness. So how we can bring that consciousness into Krishna consciousness is really the key. And Srila Prabhupada always say that just see by taking this attitude, while the impersonalist wants to become God, but the devotee is greater than God, in the sense that actually God wants to serve him. And as we saw in the case of Sudama Vipra. And many, many examples we see that actually the Lord is so keen. So there is a transcendental competition because the devotee doesn't want anything from the Lord. He just wants to give to the Lord, doesn't want to take. And the Lord wants to give everything. But what is it that the Lord actually wants to give? It's not that we should assume that He will fulfill our secret desires, that I win the lottery tomorrow, $10 million or something. No. He offers Himself for a genuine devotee, irrespective of the external circumstances. That Krishna will design for us according to what He thinks is best. If He thinks success, material success is also important, like in the case of Srila Prabhupada, there was huge success. But in the previous acharyas may not have had, from that point of view, that they had 108 temples in 12 years and 13 times around the world, had millions of followers. No. But does it mean there was any? Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj had only one disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. But it was absolutely perfect. So this competition is there that in the spiritual world where the devotee wants nothing and Krishna wants to give everything, he gives himself. So that is the greatest treasure. So our consciousness, how we can water how we can bring all the right ingredients into motivating that is really the crux of our story. So what activities that go into it? Because in a full life, I mean, we have a full range of activities that we would do. So we have to question each segment of it. There may be physical presence in temples and activities that are related to temples, but there are so many hours. Most of the hours perhaps are not in direct connection. So those also we need to kind of question and see as to how is it that we are molding, how is it that we are working towards bringing it in line. And if we need guidance, we take the right guidance to see that it may be something different. I'm just working in a bank which is 3 hours from here. I don't have any association, so I have to do that, and then I'm all on my own. Now, how do we come to a consciousness that we're not on our own? How can we get motivated enough to either read, to hear, to meet people, to talk on the phone, to invite them? Somehow how do we, kickstart our spiritual life, and how do we nurture it? That's really it's in our hands. It is not outside our hands. the negative and the positive perspective, again, as we said, that it's in our minds how we look at things. We can look at it, all the problems in life, we can see it negatively. Somebody sees it as an opportunity. If an analogy is given in like the rainy season, when the monsoons come and the clouds are, dark clouds are hovering around, and then a lot of people will feel that it's not a very, it's a gloomy day, it's a bad day, especially in the West, because they're, like in London, for instance, it rains most of the time, so for them when the sun comes out, it's like, heaven, and many parts of Europe, particularly, or the eastern parts of the US, so those parts where they don't get sun often, they are extremely keen to, celebrate it some way. But then there are people who actually, whose occupations are actually linked to, and who actually welcome the rain. Why only people? Even flowers. There are flowers which are, most of the flowers would welcome the sun because they bloom in the sunshine. But then there are flowers which grow only in the darkness. So in every species of life, we see that there are two ways to look at it. People may think that it is, the rains are very gloomy. But I remember when I was in school, maybe many of you might identify with that, but in the monsoons, the first thing when I used to get up in the morning, I say 6 o'clock, and I would rush to the window and see how much water is there, because I could make out after with experience that, if it's more than 2 feet in that particular patch, that means today there's no school. So it was a very nice feeling. And usually 1 or 2 days in a year, in that monsoon period, it would be very extraordinary heavy rains. But then there are so many others, especially adults who are going and who need, to go through the drudgery of all the muck and the floods and so on. It's a problem. So actually, there are two ways that we can look at any situation. But it's the perspective that we see from the devotee's perspective, and how we can see, then we can develop the real positive aspect, that there is nothing negative in life, actually, in one sense, if we can link it to Krishna. And there's nothing positive in life if we don't link it to Krishna. That is really the sum and substance of our life. So if we have everything, but if we don't have Krishna, the example is like we have many, many zeros, because every embellishment is a zero. You may have millions, and you may have a lot of power, you may have a lot of influence, you'll be gifted with great talent, great intelligence, so many things you could do. But if Krishna is not there, then so you can add the zeros, but there is no value, because Krishna is like the one. But the minute you put one, then all those zeros have meaning. So somebody may have 3 zeros, then there is 1,000. Somebody may have 4 zeros, it's 10,000. So then with Krishna you can do so much more. But on the other hand, even if Krishna is not there, even if you have nothing else, if you are down in the dumps, but if Krishna is there, and Krishna means acknowledging His presence. And acknowledging presence means in the worst of times. Not just when we come to the temple. Not when we are having prasad. Not when we are hearing wonderful kirtan. So we are transformed into, we can visualize a spiritual world practically. We think we are, for that moment, this is life. But that is nice, but that is actually a motivation for us, because we actually do get a glimpse. It is a fact that when we are transported there. But how do we take that? Like Prabhupada took Krishna with him when he never left Vrindavan. Prabhupada actually physically went from Vrindavan at the age of 70, but so many times he said that, no, I have not left Vrindavan, because he took Vrindavan with him to Los Angeles, he took him. So Vrindavan meant he actually created that environment where Krishna resided. And Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So if you bring that atmosphere, which we can do in our homes, elsewhere, so this is the kind of mood we need to try to cultivate, wherein somehow we bring all the facts, all our aspects of our life, and try to link it, so that and not lose hope that even if things are not going well, and things will never go the same. There'll always be, the dualities of life will always be there. So if things are going very well for some time, we should also know that it's not going to last, and therefore, we should always cling to the hope that Krishna is, whatever He does, He'll do the best. So if He pulls the rug from under our feet, we know that he's the one who's pulling it. It may be externally someone else who might be, causing some problem, but effectively, it's Krishna doing it with a purpose. Maybe it's a jolt to us, maybe it's a reminder to us, maybe we were becoming complacent, or maybe whatever his reasons, but we know that it is a deliberate act. It is not something which has accidentally happened and then it missed his attention. It's not like that. Nothing misses attention. So he's doing this, but it is always out of his loving care that no matter what. So if we develop that, then there's nothing to fear. So when we hear great devotees tell us, that how people can be fearless, like again in Prabhupada's case, many of you may have known about how he left this world. It is so inspiring because there's videos of it also, and right till the last moment. And he used to say that I would like to, because his life was preaching, because he was in translating books, because he knew that this will be the wisdom that will go into for the next thousands of years. So right literally to the last days, when he had actually stopped eating and drinking for several months, so he couldn't even walk, he was just a bag of bones, but he was still translating. And even that his mind was so clear. So he always said that I would like to leave this world, die on the battlefield like Bhishma. So there was no war, but the analogy is that the war is actually against Maya. The war is against the illusory energy of Krishna, and he wanted to bring us face to face with the reality and to bring that knowledge. So to do that, he showed by example that how a person can, no matter what the situation may be so painful, doctors would say that how this person, even lying on the bed was so painful because it's just, imagine the bones are always constantly, and when he was transported to the temple in the palanquin, but he never showed that because his consciousness was completely with Krishna. So we actually can see the reality that a person who has lived a life in such a way, Krishna actually takes him in his loving arms and actually protects him in all aspects, in such a way that he guarantees success not only in this life but beyond. So we'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments? This is a mic.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Arjuna had taken a vow that if anybody asks him to give up the Gandiva bow, he will cut off his head. And then he was not willing to fight. Krishna told him the Bhagavad Gita and finally surrendered to the will of the Lord. And on the 8th day of battlefield, there was nothing significant happening. That time Yudhishthira Maharaj told him that you are good for nothing, just give up your Gandiva bow. So that earlier bow reminded to Arjuna, and he was straight away ready to cut off the head of Yudhishthira Maharaj. And Krishna then intervened and did the justice to the credit of both the words. So, like in such situation, when you have just heard Bhagavad Gita, you know that you should be equal in respect and disrespect. And Krishna himself is present, and such incidents happens. Then what do we understand by this?
Well, there are two ways to look at it. One is that it is also an example to us that even great personalities and pure devotees like Yudhishthira Maharaj and Arjun, if they are not, because all examples in our scriptures, whether it's the Mahabharata, Bhagavatam, all these stories, Indra, for instance, Lord Brahma, they also temporarily got overcome by pride. But they're also pure devotees. So we do see that, so on one level we can see that it is an illustration, example was that what is our scope if we don't take shelter of the Lord. But the higher principle would be to see that ultimately they are pure devotees who are instruments in Krishna's hands, and Krishna is demonstrating to us by using his various in various scenarios, various scenes, like for instance in this situation also, that how ultimately the two of them put aside egos and surrender to the Lord. So that is the conclusions that we should take, rather than saying that he should never acted this or not acted that. Now that is Krishna's will, how he would like to do that. But most important was that finally every act they did, when Krishna intervened, it is also to show us that when Krishna intervenes and do we accept his, he is willing to intervene, he is willing in intervening in our lives if we want to bring him. But if we close the door on him, then he can't help us. He won't help us against our will. So here they have accepted what Krishna wanted. You can pass the mic.
Thank you very much. If things are not happening good with us as a student and the neophyte devotee, then what should we have to do? If we are, as a student, we are working as well as practicing the Krishna consciousness, but when things are happening bad, then we are hesitant what to do, and our consciousness become lower, then what should we have to do?
So when we go through such periods, in fact, we should know that the remedy works, the medicine works, and the medicine is that we need to intensify our spiritual practices or be more associated with devotees, because what happens externally is already is Krishna's plan. So you can assume that if you had not come to this moment, say somebody's health deteriorates very much, and he had so much ambition, and he's a sportsman, let's say, he's a very accomplished sportsman, and then suddenly he has some internal disease which now it devastates him. But you have to see that if he had, it was going to happen to him, and if he had not come to Krishna consciousness, then he would not even have been able to face it. So having come to Krishna consciousness at least has given him an understanding of what he should do when things are out of your control. So what we should see is are those things because of my actions, or is it something which is within my control, directly or indirectly? Then that's where we need to concentrate on. But things which happen for the good or for the so-called bad, which things are not happening well, say environment which we have not, it may be relatives, or it may be, the principal, or external situations. If it is not in our control at all, in spite of our best, then we have to accept that Krishna has a message for us to keep us in this consciousness, because ultimately most people come to Krishna consciousness out of fear or out of miseries and out of anxieties. So if we are turning towards Krishna because of that, and if maybe Krishna feels that we are not perhaps strong enough yet, fixed enough in spiritual life, so maybe he may also give us more difficulties to make sure that we keep in touch. So we can't speculate on the reasons, but we understand that what he does is for our good. So we concentrate on if we can do anything to improve our situation, or in our thinking, our behavior, our reactions, we should do it. But if we cannot, and if it is outside our control, then we learn to tolerate it. And that we can only learn if we listen to the philosophy and see the devotees who are practicing it, take their guidance, they can help us. And it's never a situation when things will remain the same. So things change, but then same problem which we had now may go away. Right now, you may be intensely feeling that this problem, if only this problem goes away, that's consuming my entire consciousness, and I'm totally, I'm really fearful, or I don't want it. You will find that problem will go away, maybe 6 months or a year or 2 years, but then that time you will look back and say that problem is gone, but I'm not without problems. I'm still in anxiety, I still have but there's another problem. It's always the case. So we can then see that it's the mind which actually, how we look at things, and which can give us that feeling of helplessness, or and to work on the mind, we have to purify intelligence. And to purify the intelligence, we need to follow a practice which cleanses the heart, and which gives us greater understanding. And that's where we talk of the consciousness. Yeah. There's a mic.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the enlightening class, Prabhu. Prabhuji, as you mentioned that whatever activities we do, we should always question our consciousness. So when we are working, we go to our office, then it's very difficult to judge our consciousness at that time. And it's like a jungle out there. and I'm sure you'll agree with me.
So, when we say we judge, look at, it's not that every moment, we leave aside 5 minutes every hour and say, now I have to just judge, what did I do in the last 50 minutes? It's not that minute microman. Like Arjun, when he was fighting the war, every time he was taking the bow, and when we hear if you read the Mahabharata, they were releasing thousands of arrows in every second, practically. And the kind of sharpness of complete concentration that was needed is incalculable to invoke the mantras and to have the kind of not one, to not make a mistake. So he was not dependent in that sense, saying that now Krishna, you have told me so. No. So he has to use his effort in fullest extent. So when we are going to in our occupation, it is a jungle, but you can create a park in the jungle for yourself, as we saw. So, and that park can be internal, in the sense that if you are not too worried about how others may laugh at you, if that is the problem, for instance, or if you're going to the canteen and you're worried that people will mock at you because you don't eat onion, garlic, this fellow to sadhu ban gaya abhi, so he's kam se gaya. No, so if that is not, so these are internal issues, because that means our ego is getting hurt. Or it may be that the boss is upset at us and he just talks anything. See, this is the various types of issues could be there. There's a highly competitive situation. So we have to do what is best in our capacity within the ethical and moral bounds, the boundaries that we do have. But within that, we do have to make every effort. We have to work hard. In fact, we should work with greater, we have actually a greater advantage. As a devotee has a greater advantage because it is, and this is proven by all psychologists, that the negative emotions actually bind us down to the maximum extent. And those who are able to release that and actually release their positive energies, create positive thinking, are the ones who will be able to think freely and see what is best that they can do. Now, others will use techniques, or they'll go to psychologists, and they do succeed. Some will succeed, some will not. But here we have a natural advantage, because as a devotee, we understand the truth, and we know how things are happening in general, and then even the person opposite to you is not in control of his life. Even the greatest businessman, politician, leader, whatever, then nobody is in control. The next minute they will be finished. John Kennedy or Indira Gandhi, they were practically the most powerful personality in the world. In 1 second, they became dust. Finished. Somebody shot them and they were dead. Where they gone? The body is there, but they're gone. What power? Nothing. Then everyone is his, the relatives want to dispose of the body. The same body which was giving us the fear. So once we understand that, then when we go into it, we are rearmed and we do our best, but we don't get affected so much. So the negative consequences of whatever it is, it may be internally, it may be externally, we're able to face and do our best. And we may not get success, but that way, then the majority of people don't get success. So the success is not, lack of success is not because you are a devotee, and success is not because you are not a devotee. It is not, you may get success if you are a devotee, material success, you may not get. And you may have failure even whether you are devotee or not devotee. But a lot will depend. You keep doing your effort, and then whatever Krishna wants, but you have that confidence that Krishna is directly taking responsibility for your life if you are dedicating it to Him. And if He judges it that it is better for you to have greater problems, maybe because of that you are coming on Sundays, maybe you are started chanting. I'm saying from my experience that really, when we are in greater anxiety, we actually take spiritual life more attentively, then philosophy sinks in, then you really realize that. So it happens in most cases, and the Bhagavad Gita also tells us, 7.15 I think, that of the 4 times, most people do come in who have great challenges. So either way, if Krishna opens the door, it will happen. But it doesn't mean that we have to look and say, then let's look back the previous hour or the previous day and say, no, we carry on. But along with it, in the hours outside office, this is in our control. And how do we spend that? How much time do we reflect and follow certain practices? That's important. Any other questions? So, yeah.
Yeah, Prabhuji, we all know that you are a very busy person at work and you face so many challenges. So, I wanted to ask you, how do you maintain Krishna consciousness at work?
Difficult for me to judge. I don't know whether, if you ask some of my colleagues and people who are there, they might feel that I'm a demon. And I can, and I'm not saying out of more, I'm just telling as a fact. Because we have to do what we have to do. So sometimes, I can't judge for myself. I'm hoping that but I can say one thing that I do question myself very much because ultimately it mostly comes down to relationship with people. You are dealing with people. So, and if you're dealing with people at all levels, especially at senior levels, so I would look at it, would like to see that I'm completely fair. But I would also expect, for instance, if somebody is given a large responsibility, then he's expected to be doing his job. You give him all the effort he wants. But if it doesn't work out for some reason, either because of, then we have to see what we can do. So I'm giving the extreme step that one has to. But I think it's important that we should be at all times very fair. That would I like it? Would I also like it the way I'm treating others? Means if I was in that position, I think that's one indicator. Second would be so we try to take a larger implication of larger horizon of affecting people, and of course ethically also we would like to see that how we can not embarrass my spiritual master or Prabhupada. That should be also our endeavor in everything we do. Generally, that should be the guiding principle, that people know that I'm following ISKCON and I'm a devotee. So they may not tell me on my face. Many people appreciate it, I'm sure, but many people may not be appreciating and may not be telling me also. So that is not worrying. But the issue is that knowing that I'm a devotee, how I behave or how I address my occupation, the effort I put in, the result, the success, I should make every effort. We may have challenges, but if people feel that there's no effort at all put, or we've not taken all the tools of help that we can take, then that means I'm letting down my spirit. Because people are immediately going to say, okay, see, if you join ISKCON, this is what happens. So I'm acutely aware of that, and I definitely I never forget that I should do. Now, things may not work out the way you want, but nobody would then say that you've not done the best. So broadly in two ways. So one is the work ethic, and the other is the relationship with people, that you should be fair. But fair does not mean that, because ultimately if you are in a commercial world, you also have to satisfy so many stakeholders. So when you're looking at all stakeholders, if you want to just satisfy one stakeholder, which is employee, but then you have shareholders, you have government, you have labor, there's so many aspects. Everyone has to see. So overall, one has to take a view. And thirdly, I'm always seeing if there's which ways, financially or other ways, if I can help in any way, I can spread this movement in my small way, whatever way, because I've given this opportunity, and people do know it. So I do have. So that is on the back of my mind, but we have to do it intelligently. You can't just be taking a short-term gain with a long-term repercussion, because you can't thrust it down people's throat. So gradually, there are ways to do that, and I'm looking for opportunities. Thank you. So I'll end there.
Hare Krishna. There is an announcement. This announcement is regarding a seminar